So to begin this week's session, we're going to start up on our feet. And today we're very much going to be focusing on ways that we can relieve hip and knee pain. And the way that we're going to approach and explore relieving this, making our hips and our knees more comfortable, is actually to think about this connection from our feet all the way up into our center. So thinking about actually how does what's going on at the periphery and all the way towards it connect with, and how is it affected by our center? So this is where, when I talk about our center, I'm talking about our torso. If you think between your shoulders and your hips, this is where we have the largest sections of muscles. So when these muscles are being held in particular patterns of tension, actually they have a huge effect on how all the smaller muscle groups can function. So if we've got something going on with our knees, or even maybe our feet and our ankles, we can spend time exploring that, which is really helpful. But we also want to be able to connect it to our center and release those patterns in the center. So this is what we're going to explore. And because we're going to be exploring some movement with our legs and sliding on the floor, you want to make sure that your feet are going to be able to slide. So that might mean keeping socks on or taking socks off, depending on what surface you're on. So if you just want to check that and either put on or take off your socks, depending on what you're going to be laid on, so we can get that sorted first. And then we're going to start with some explorations and scans in standing. So when you are ready, let yourself stand in the easiest, most comfortable way for you. So just give yourself a moment to settle into your feet, however they're going to meet the ground right now. Could you quieten or soften any deliberate holding or positioning of yourself here and now? So see if you could just let that soften, become quieter if there is any of that. And then bring your awareness down to your feet. And what do you notice initially about how they are meeting the ground? There might be a lot of clear information there, or it might be vague. You might notice some subtle differences between left and right foot, or it might be very obvious. And then starting to get a little more deliberate with your awareness and your focus of your footprints. Where do you feel the weight most clearly through your left foot? Where are there areas of lighter or barely any contact with the ground? And where is it heaviest? Or maybe it feels very evenly spread between toes and heels, inside and outside edges. And then take your awareness to your left foot. And where do you feel the weight through this foot most clearly? Are you feeling it in the same places as it is in your right foot, or is it different? And notice if the differences are becoming clearer the more that you focus your awareness there. Are there details starting to show themselves that initially weren't obvious? And then bring your awareness up to your hips. And notice where do you consider, where do you feel when you think about your hips? Is it right inside the hip joint, where that rounded top of each leg bone sits in that socket within your pelvis? Is it right inside there? Or is it more perhaps towards the front or the back or the side of your hips? Our hips are a 3D structure. But notice if you focus on one part of that joint. And then to bring even more awareness, could you use your hands and feel around the left hip to begin with? So put your hands to that left hip, the front, the back, the side. And notice when you think about your hip, actually how much area is involved in that for you. And then go ahead and compare with the right hip. Is this a different experience to feel with your hands, this right hip? Does it feel bigger or smaller? Maybe the texture or the sensations are different. And then just to start to feel this connection between your feet all the way out at your periphery up into the center here, place your hands on the front of your hips. And we're going to explore some movement through our feet. So could you begin to sink into your heels as if you were going to lift your toes up? Just sink the weight heavily into the heels of each foot and notice what response you feel in your hips. And then let the weight spread back out to its resting place in your feet. And if your hands are on the sides of your hips, could you bring them to the front? So you probably feel a bit of your lower belly and just the tops of your thighs. And then go ahead and explore that again. Just sink into your heels and notice if anything happens around your hips, your lower belly, and then come back to your resting spot. And then could you go the other way? Could you begin to shift the weight forward through the balls of the feet so your toes start to get heavier, as if you were about to lift your heels? And is there a reaction under your hands? And just explore that deliberate shift of weight a few times. Where the weight is in your feet, does it affect what is happening in your center? And then let's explore a different pattern. Could you roll onto the inside edges of your feet? And allow your knees to soften, they might bend a little bit. Notice what you feel under your hands. Is there a connection? And then release from that. And then go ahead and roll to the outside edges of your feet. Maybe your big toes, the inside edges, begin to lift a little. What do you feel under your hands? Explore those two directions one more time. Rolling inwards, letting the knees bend a little. And then pressing on out. And then let that settle. And what sometimes happens through our feet is that the weight shifts onto the inside of one foot and the outside of the other. So go ahead and do that. So roll onto the inside of one foot, the outside of the other, and notice what effect that has on the balance under your hands. Are there now different things happening? Different sensations under left and right? And then go the other way. And notice if this feels quite natural and normal to go one way and feels a bit clunky or awkward the other way. That's one of the ways that noticing this might be a little bit of a pattern for us, that to roll one way feels like second nature. It may well have become second nature. So when you finish those explorations, we're going to take a walking scan. So go ahead and take a walk around your space. And notice how your feet are connecting with the ground as you move across it. Are there some of those patterns in standing showing up? And what kind of shape movement do you feel happening in your hips? Does it feel like a kind of linear movement back and forth or side to side? How rounded does the movement or circular does the movement in your hips feel? Maybe one feels more circular than the other. Or maybe that seems like a really strange thought or consideration. And then just to explore some different movements through our feet as we're walking, could you begin to scrunch your feet together a little bit, almost like you didn't really want the soles to touch the floor? Tightening and scrunching your feet a little bit as if to increase the arches of your feet. And maybe your belly tightens a bit. Go ahead and tighten your belly. Notice what effect this holding pattern has on your connection with the ground, your confidence and balance. And then whatever you're holding on to there, intentionally soften that. Notice the effect when you release these patterns of holding. And then could you explore the opposite? Could you spread your feet wide as if you really wanted as much of the soles of your feet to make contact with the ground? And as you do, could you bring yourself more upright? Maybe increase a little arch of your back. That might already have been happening. And notice how this is the opposite pattern. But what effect does this holding have? Is it more familiar or less so? And then whatever you are intentionally creating there, allow that to soften. Walk your way to your mat and then lay yourself down on your back. Giving yourself time to settle, to meet the floor through this part of you now, and in a comfortable way. So keeping these bent or straightening them out as is accessible for you. And if you can sense any areas of deliberate holding, could you allow that to soften as well? You can maybe use each breath just to sink a little more. And just as with your feet, notice where you most clearly feel your weight meeting the floor. Is that happening a little more clearly through one side of you? So you're starting to pay attention to any imbalances or differences between your left and right. Your footprints may have been different. So how does that relate to this position? And then notice the weightedness of your feet. So if your knees are bent, noticing the weight through the soles. If your legs are straight, notice the weight through the heels. And how symmetrical are your footprints in this position? Does one feel somewhat bigger or clearer or heavier than the other? So when we're using the floor to help notice our position, What we're paying attention to is how our muscles are positioning our bones. Our bones will only go where our muscles place them. This is what you're paying attention to. This is our start point for restoring functional muscles. And then let's explore some movement with our feet here. So if your knees are bent, could you slide one leg out straight? And if you have one leg out straight, you're going to start with the foot and ankle on that straight leg. And if both legs are straight, you can just pick a side. And could you explore some ankle circles with your chosen foot? Just circling the foot, the ankle around. Notice the quality of that circle. Is it a circle or is it a somewhat different shape? Is it a little bit clunky or clicky in places, or does it feel smooth? How big is it? And what else is involved here? Is this merely taking place at the foot and the ankle, or is there more of the leg involved? How far up this leg is responding to the movement of the foot? And you can explore both directions if you haven't. And then just bring that circle to a pause. Let that side rest. And then let's compare with the other leg. So if you want to bend the first leg up, feel free, slide your other leg out. And then go ahead and explore some circles with this foot and ankle. And is it the same experience? Does it take more or less effort to circle this foot? Is it as luxurious and lazy, or is it smoother? Maybe the size of the circle feels different. And how much of the rest of you is involved in this? Can you feel an echo of this circle coming up the leg? Does it travel as far as it did on that first side? What do you notice? And then let that settle. Slide up that heel so you can check that your foot will slide on the floor. We really want to be able to slide the feet rather than lift them to bend the knees. So just check that you're able to slide your feet on the floor today. Putting on or taking off socks as you need. And then when both knees are bent, let's come and connect our foot movements into our center. So we're going to stay at the feet to begin with. Could you begin to sink into your heels? So let your heels sink into the floor. Both knees are bent here. If you've got one leg straight, bend them up. Let the soles of your feet lift and shine to the bottom of your mat, sinking into the heels. And notice what tightening you feel through the top of your feet up the ankles. How far up through your legs do you feel that? And then could you take at least a breath to slowly release the front of ankles, top of feet, floating the soles back down. Notice if that's smooth or bumpy. And then let's connect this lifting of the feet with the pattern that it connects to in our center. So bringing your focus to the front of your belly and your belt line. You can pop a hand there if it helps. Go ahead and sink and tighten your belly. Feel your lower back round. And as you sink your belly and tighten up there, could you again sink into your heels? And feel that tightening from your belly down the front of your legs to your toes. And then focus on softening your belly, the front of your waist. Could you use that release to go all the way down to your toes? Let yourself have a breath or two at rest. And then let's see how far up through our whole soma we feel the effects of this. So go ahead and sink and tighten your belly again. The back rounds, the toes lift. And how far up to your head do you feel a response? What is happening as part of this? And then to be involved as a whole system, you may intentionally want to tip your chin up. So remind your neck that it's connected all the way down and through to your toes. So let your chin tip up. Feel that arch in the back of your neck. And then can you release from your center out, up through your neck, down through your legs. Release with awareness to a place of no conscious effort. And then let's explore the opposite pattern. So coming back down to your feet, could you now sink the weight into the balls of your feet, lifting up your heels? As if you had high heel shoes on. Where do you feel a contraction through your ankles and legs now? Is it through the back? And if so, how far up through the back of your legs do you feel that echo? And then slowly and with control, lower your heels. Is it smooth or bumpy? Do the muscles in the back of your legs allow for a smooth release? Then let's connect this tightening of the back of the legs further up the muscles of your back. So now bring your focus to the back of your waist, back of your belt line, and increase the arch of your lower back. Go ahead and arch and tighten it on purpose. Belly lifts, heels lift. And can you follow that intentional tightening of your lower back down the back of your legs to your feet? Can you feel that connection? And as you soften your lower back, relax it on purpose. Does that release flow, or does it need a little prompt? Now all the way back to rest. And then let's explore how far up through the other end of your soma you feel a response to this. So go ahead and arch. And as your heels lift, how does the rest of your spine react? Is there movement of your head if it goes all the way up to the neck? Notice what happens just in response. And then if you need to, go ahead and lower the chin down to remind your neck it's connected to your pelvis, hips, and feet. And then soften your back. How far out do you feel that release flow? Maybe one side releases quicker than the other. Does one foot land before the other? And then go ahead and explore a couple more of each of these arch and flattens, having a rest in between, bringing in the feet. And notice if one leg and foot just seems a little more easily connected to your center. Maybe there are different sensations, different levels of awareness or control. When you've finished your last one, let yourself rest however you like, keeping knees bent or sliding your feet out. Letting go of anything you don't need and checking in with the contact that your feet are now making with the ground. Is there a difference? Is laying here with straight legs now more accessible, perhaps? Maybe that is the difference. Have you found another position in which you can be comfortable? If so, how wonderful. So from here, go ahead and slide up your heels again, bending up your knees. And let's explore some different patterns. So choose a leg and a shoulder and arm that you would like to begin with. Whichever side you'd like to begin with, could you take your other hand and draw up and down that side of your front between the shoulder, the top of the chest, down that side of you to the front of the hip. So just bringing your awareness to this side, the shoulder, the hip, and everything in between. And then use the ground to feel the back of this same side. So from the shoulder blade down the back of ribs, belt line, and hip. So there's a front and there's a back. And then bringing your awareness to the leg all the way down to the foot of your focus side. Could you begin to roll onto the inside edge of that foot? And notice how when you change the position of the foot, your knee tips in. And can you feel a closing, maybe a bit of a tightening of your groin on this side? Does your belly begin to tighten a little bit? Go ahead and add that in. And then keep everything where it is. Bring your focus to the foot. Could you begin to replant the sole of your foot? And notice how your inner thigh, your groin and belly have to release to allow that. Bringing the knee back to standing. And then let's start in the center. So could you begin to sink and tighten your belly? And could you tighten into this inner thigh, this side of your groin? Tipping the knee in, you might feel that happening in response. Rolling all the way onto the inside of the foot. And then keep the leg and foot where it is. Begin to soften your belly. And notice, does releasing your belly begin to release the leg? Does the knee and foot follow? Nice. And then let's explore the same pattern, but bringing in the upper part of this side with the shoulder and arm. So beginning with the shoulder on this side, could you begin to roll your shoulder forward? You're tightening into this top corner of your chest and let your arm roll with it. Let it roll in to meet your side. Sink and tighten your belly. Let the knee roll in. Let yourself roll onto the inside of the foot. And can you feel how this side of your front is closing and tightening? And then could you begin to soften your belly and chest? Does that open out your shoulder and hip? Releasing your arm and leg, hand and foot. Almost as if you are folding and rolling this whole side of your front inwards. So your other leg is pretty quiet here. So the other knee is going to stay upright. Go ahead and sink your belly again. Roll that same shoulder and arm, hip and leg in. And can you feel the space through the back of the hip and the back of the shoulder? Take a moment to feel the space through the back and then intentionally release your front. And could you notice the last part of this pattern to melt and deflate? Sometimes there's more release after we've finished moving. So give yourself that time. It's the only reason we're going into these patterns, so we feel the release. And then let's explore the opposite way. So could you now arch your back? Let your belly lift, let your chest widen. And this time, could you begin to roll the arm away from you and let the knee tip out? Feel how you roll onto the outside edge of the foot. This is the opposite pattern. You're opening and widening the front. Where do you feel the effort in your back? Back of shoulder, back of hip. And then release your back. Notice how and if arm and hand, leg and foot follow. And could you just rest wherever you land? Notice any temptation to deliberately position yourself. And compare the sensations through that focused side with the other side. Is your foot making a different contact, or maybe the back of your hip and shoulder are making a different contact? What do you notice? And then let's explore these on the other side. So bringing your focus to, let's start with the shoulder and the arm. And if it helps, use your hand to just draw up and down this side of your front, if that helps you to bring your focus here between the front of the shoulder and chest, the front of the belly and hip. Feeling the contact with the floor through the back of this second side. And then when you are ready, could you begin to roll your shoulder forward and in? Intentionally tightening into this side of your chest. Does your arm and hand follow? Does it roll to meet your side here? If not, add it in on purpose. And then feel where your chest has to relax to rest your shoulder, arm and hand. And then let's explore that pattern through the leg. So could you begin to roll onto the inside edge of this foot? Notice how doing that moves the leg. Can you feel a closing into your inner thigh and groin here? Could you add it in on purpose? Could you tighten into your groin here? Does that mean that you tighten your belly? And then soften your belly, your groin, your inner thigh, replanting your foot with the floor. Take a breath there. And then let's come to the place in between this shoulder and hip. So could you begin to sink and tighten your belly? Feel your back round as the knee and arm roll in. And can you feel a deliberate tightening through this side of your groin, your belly, and your chest? If you can't feel that, what do you need to do to feel it? And then can you release from your center out? And notice if hip and shoulder release together, or is it staggered? Might want to have a almost like a post-yawn sigh at the end. And then where do you want to begin this next one from? Wherever you want to begin, can you feel that closing and tightening through your front? Ensuring that the hand and arm, the foot and leg are following the pattern of your center. And as you hold that position, that tightening, can you feel a spaciousness through the back? Can you feel the shoulder blade widen away from the spine? Can you feel the back of this hip widen? And then notice where you land as you release with awareness on purpose. When you are back at rest, explore the opposite pattern of lifting and widening your belly and chest. Could you press the shoulder blade back? Does that take your arm away? Could you let the knee tip out? Does that tip you into this side of your pelvis? And where do you feel an arching and tightening of your back in between the back of hip and shoulder? Where do you need to release in order to restore rest? And when you feel like you've landed in your place of rest, just take a moment to feel the effects of how your foot, hip, and shoulder and everything in between on that side makes contact with the floor. Have you created a little more balance? And because we are a whole system, it's helpful to learn and remember by breaking these patterns down, but we're a whole system. So let's now move as such. So beginning in your center, could you sink your belly and chest? As your chest sinks, roll those shoulders forward, arms in. Add your groin and inner thighs as your knees tip together, your feet roll in. Pause there and notice, is your neck still involved in this pattern of your front and back? Or with all that other focus, did it get a little bit lost? Tip your chin up. And then from the center of your front, wherever you feel that, release from there in all directions. How far out does it flow freely? Is there an inner thigh or a part of your neck that needs a little reminder to go with it? And then could you explore the opposite? Could you slide those shoulders back, and as you tip onto the outside edges of your feet, can you feel your back arch and contract? If not, could you add it in on purpose? If your belly doesn't get bigger, could you add that in on purpose? Feel where the effort is most clear in the back of you and release from that spot. Does it reach your toes, your fingers, your neck? And then beginning with the feet, could you intentionally roll to the inside edge of both feet? Does that happen more on one than the other? And then from your feet, follow that pattern up to the legs. Did the knees come together? Is your groin tightening? Is your belly sinking? Roll those shoulders forward, arms in, chin tips up. And then could you begin to release from your feet up? Breathing and releasing until you reach your neck. Let yourself deflate at the end of that. And then exploring one more into the opposite pattern from your feet. Could you begin to roll onto the outside edges of your feet? Do your legs just follow because they can't help but follow? Do you feel the weight spread towards the sides of your hips? Does your back arch? Do your shoulders begin to press back? Go ahead and add in that whole pattern from feet up to head. And then how would it be to release from your feet up? Is it possible? Or does everything want to release together? When you finish that last one, if comfortable, you can slide your legs out one at a time. Let go of anything you don't need to give yourself a moment to just check how you're meeting the ground now. Are there some differences showing up for you that you may or may not be able to put your finger on? But is the feeling different of laying here now? If the changes feel somewhat subtle or quiet, just know that subtle does not mean insignificant. You have created a change in how your muscles are holding you. So let's bring some movement and release to our side. So you're going to keep one leg out straight, bend up another leg. So choose whichever one you'd like to bend up. And then with your hands, could you draw up and down the sides of you, between your armpits, down the sides of your ribs to the sides of your hips. So this is where we're going to put our focus. Your hands are like a spotlight for your awareness. It's going to go where you're drawing up and down. And one leg is out straight. So if you've got both knees bent, that's it. And then bringing your hands to your sides so you can feel the space in between your pelvis and ribs. So remember, our muscles move our bones. Our bones only go where our muscles put them. So the side with the bent knee, you're going to bring the side of your pelvis towards your ribs here. Because our bones only go where our muscles take them, we're going to use our waist muscles. So could you begin to hike your hip there? Slide the pelvis to meet the ribs and feel your waist tighten. Does the opposite waist lengthen? And then create space, change your mind, release the pelvis from the ribs, restore your resting length. And then go ahead and explore that hip hiker again. Notice if your back is arching, the movement is through the sides. So if your back is arching, could you just allow that to quieten down a little? And as you hike this bent knee side, shortening on purpose, can you feel a lengthening through the straight leg side? If not, what would it take for you to feel that? And then release your hip hiker, come all the way back to what feels like your resting place. And then this time, could you explore the same pattern, but going in to explore it from a different place? So could you get longer through that straight leg side? Could you create space between the pelvis and ribs as the leg lengthens? Maybe your armpit moves away from your side here. Does it slide up towards your ear? And does your bent knee side already start to hike? If not, add it in on purpose. And when you've felt that, go ahead and release. Bringing your sides back to equal resting lengths. And then whichever leg is straight, go ahead and bend that up. Slide out your bent knee and let's explore this pattern the other way. If so far you've noticed there are differences in how your feet move, in how they connect with the ground, you might notice some differences on this second side. So could you now begin to hike your other hip? Bent knee side hip hike. Can you bring the side of your pelvis to meet your ribs? And is that as easy? Does your straight leg side lengthen freely? And then change your mind. Create space between pelvis and ribs. Feel the back of your hips just turn on against the floor. And then could you explore this hip hiker by lengthening through the straight leg side? So could you get longer through that whole side of your torso? Could you let that straight leg lengthen a little further? And does your bent knee hip begin to hike? Go ahead and add it in. Notice if your back is arching, could you let that turn down a little bit to feel the movement in the side and then intentionally release it? Returning back to your resting length between left and right. And then if you bend up that straight leg, could you alternate these hip hikes? Hiking and shortening one side, releasing to rest. So give yourself a breath at rest to feel the release, and then hiking the other way. And where you notice your back might be arching and wanting to get involved, take a moment at rest just to release your back. So you can play with this movement through your sides. And as you alternate from side to side, as you feel the back of your hips just sliding against the floor, do you feel the same sliding beginning to happen through your upper back? Maybe your shoulder blades begin to slide against the floor a little bit. Maybe the back of your head begins to wag against the floor a little bit from side to side. How far up through your soma do you feel this movement? It's never just one place when we talk about function. And then finish up the one that you're on. Take a rest. You can slide your legs out or keep them bent. Just give yourself a moment at rest. Letting go of anything you don't need. And I often find the most indulgent way to come to that is to take a yawn or have a post-yawn sigh. Just notice how the ground is feeling underneath you now. Do you feel as if it's getting more accessible or more comfortable the more tension you release? So all of the movements you've been exploring so far, releasing your front and back and sides, brings us into a very functional movement for our legs that connects into our center, all the way up to the other end. So keeping one leg straight, bend up your other knee, and we're going to focus the movement with the straight leg to begin with. And as always, we're exploring these movements without increasing any discomfort. So there's a sense of ease and carefreeness to how we explore these movements, but they're also very intentional. So your straight leg, could you begin to roll onto the outside edge of that foot? And as you do, could you let your knee bend out to the side? And slide the outside edge of that foot up the center of your mat. Could you make this easy? So we're still laid on our back. We're just bending the knee and sliding the foot. Sliding it on up the outside edge of that foot. So your knee is tipped out. That's it. And then keeping the foot on the floor, could you slide it back away? And notice how the leg and therefore the hip just follows. And then go ahead, explore that again. So could you begin to roll to the outside edge of that foot, sliding it up the floor? Notice how the knee tips out. And is there a tipping in your pelvis? Do you tip into the hip of the leg you're moving? If not, could you let that happen? How far up through your torso do you feel a response? Does it flow all the way up to your shoulders, to your head? And then lazily slide that foot back down. Does the weight across your hips change? Does it change further up? And then let's explore the opposite direction with this same leg and foot. So could you now begin to roll towards the inside edge of this foot, bending your knee inwards? And could you slide the inside edge of your foot up the outside of your mat? And is that as easy? Keeping your foot in contact with the floor. Has there been a shift of weight into the other hip? And then slide that inside edge back away. Notice how the leg just follows. Doesn't need to think about it. It knows it's connected to your foot. So your other knee is bent up. The leg that isn't moving, keep that bent to make this nice and easy. And then go ahead and explore that movement one more time. So you're going to roll towards the inside edge of the foot and you're going to slide that edge up the side of your mat. The knee tips in. Can you let the weight tip into the opposite hip? And if that wasn't happening before, does it make it a little more accessible? And then slide that foot back away, keeping it in touch with the floor. Does moving the foot and leg rebalance you in the center? So then we're going to alternate between these two movements. Go ahead and slide onto the outside edge. The knee tips out. Feel the weight tip into this hip. And can you follow from the hip all the way up and across your torso to the opposite shoulder? Could that opposite shoulder get a little heavier? Maybe your head has already rolled towards it. Go ahead and add that in. And then from your neck and that opposite shoulder, could you unwind through your center? Rebalancing your hips, straightening out the leg. So we're exploring some spiral patterns here that help to keep us balanced, help us to fall like a child. If you look at children tripping and falling, they spiral. They're less likely to hurt themselves. So go ahead and slide your foot out to the side, knee tips in, and as you do, could you tip into the other hip? And how far up and across to the opposite shoulder do you feel this spiral pattern? Does the opposite shoulder get a little lighter? And then could you release from that opposite shoulder across your torso to the hip? Sliding out the leg. And then if you like, go ahead and explore one more of each of those patterns, allowing it to be easy. And is there any part of you between the hip and the opposite shoulder that could be a little softer, that maybe doesn't need to try so hard? Is there more effort to move into one of these patterns? And when your leg is back out straight, if comfortable, slide your other leg out and just give yourself a moment at rest to notice how that foot and leg you've just been exploring connects with the ground and to the opposite shoulder. Is there a different sense of awareness and connection compared to the side that has not yet had an experience of this? Nice. Yeah, you can always give me a thumbs up. I love a thumbs up. Nice. So notice if there's a difference, if there's a change. And then let's explore that second side. So your first leg is going to stay out straight. Sorry, is going to bend up. Your second leg is going to stay out straight. I'm trying my best not to confuse you. And could you begin to roll onto the outside of this foot, letting the knee tip out as the foot slides up? Is there an immediate reaction in your center here? Does your pelvis tip? And then slide the foot back away. How is your pelvis, your belt line connected to that? And then could you go the other way? Could you begin to roll onto the inside edge of the foot? Let it sweep up the side as the knee tips in. And does your center automatically respond to this? And then as the foot slides away, does the center rebalance between left and right? Go ahead and slide the foot up the middle. And as you do, can you intentionally tip into this hip? And how far across your belly and back and chest do you feel to the opposite shoulder? Could you let that opposite shoulder get a little heavier? Does your head roll to it? If not, add it in on purpose and then unwind from that spiral. Can you feel that slide your leg away? Feel that place of rest. And as the foot rolls in and sweeps up the side of your mat, can you feel the hip here get lighter and lift from the floor? Does that follow all the way over chest and back to the opposite shoulder? Could you add in that same lifting forwards? And then unwind all the way down and across. Does the shoulder connect to this foot? Go ahead and explore one more of each of those if it's okay to on that side. And you choose how far to slide the foot. That means you're exploring this in an easy and soft way. Is your back telling you that you're exploring this in an easy and soft way, or is it telling you there's a fair bit of effort going on here? And we've lost or forgotten about our conscious control of these functional patterns. Often it feels tricky, or we might have to work harder than is needed. And then when you've finished your last one, slide out your legs. If comfortable, let yourself rest and deflate in whatever position on your back works for you. And if that first side felt quite different compared to that second side, is that you're learning from these movements? Or maybe there's another takeaway for you. And then coming back to those ankle and foot circles, go ahead and circle one foot around. And notice the quality, the size of that movement. And does the movement of your foot and ankle feel more connected now to more of you? Have you opened up communication from your foot all the way up through your soma? And then go ahead and explore with the other foot, the other ankle. In what way is this a different experience now to what it was when you first laid down? Is there more involvement with more of you? Because you've reminded your system that it is a whole system. Tension interferes with our ability to function as a whole system, and this practice helps us to restore it. And then when you've had time for those before and after circles, roll to one side and bringing yourself back up into standing, could you allow yourself to just stand wherever you land on your feet? So again, avoiding any temptation to deliberately position or move yourself. Experience where your muscles and how your muscles are now placing and holding you. To save the learning, we want to notice the change rather than shuffle back to our habitual ways of holding. So notice as you stand here now, how do your feet meet the floor? Are your footprints a different size, shape, weight? And if so, does it feel more balanced in how you're standing here now? Nice. When we restore function, we're restoring balance. And then you can keep pressing save on all that learning by taking a walk. So go ahead and walk around your space and notice the contact through your feet as you walk. Notice the movement of your hips. Do they seem to move in a slightly different pattern? Is the shape more circular now, if it felt quite linear before? If your feet are rolling, maybe your hips are rolling. The circular shape is designed to roll. So enjoy experiencing your walk as it is now and continuing to integrate all of that learning for your nervous system.